Okay, I think we are now on. I think we're now on. So welcome to everybody who is also on already. I love it. And hopefully you can all see me either on Facebook Live and or here on the Zoom webinar. I'm just checking in with my friend from Smart Pots. And making sure that she sees me on the Garden Lady page, and we'll be off and running soon. I'm so glad you could all join me tonight. This is really wonderful. We will get started, of course, as always, about 1 minute after, 2 minutes after 5, okay? But we open up a little bit early so that everybody can get comfortable and know that we're here together and all is well. Okay, I would like this Zoom audience, if you can, to type me a message in chat, okay? You go down to the speech bubble if you've never done this before. You click on that speech bubble that's either at the bottom or the side of your screen, depending on your device, and it pops up a window where you can type things. And you can type to me or you can type to everyone, all right? But I'd love to know, now so many of you have already said hello, good. And thank you, Betty. Betty commented on my anthurium. I just went into my front room where I have a bunch of plants in the sunny window and I said, you are on camera. So I am so glad. What I would love to know is if this is your first time Zooming with me, that would be fun to know. I would also like to know if you knew about Smart Pots before, or if this is your introduction to them. So let me know that as well. Christine said she just bought some new pots. So that is great. And it's her first Zoom. So wonderful, wonderful. I am going to show you some great things. I've got a Smart Pot here in my Zoom room. And it's funny because I'll address this right now while we're waiting to get going. And I'm sure somebody will ask me about this as we go into the webinar, because I grabbed this out of the shed. I was up in my shed today. This is a standard black Smart Pot. And as you can see, it's been used, right? And I grabbed this out of the shed because we have a whole stack of used Smart Pots in the shed that we empty out in the fall, and we rinse them out and we put them back into the shed once they are dry. And then in the spring, we haul them out again. And this pot here, look at what good, other than having some random yuccum on it, roots and various dust. This one is at least 8 years old. Okay. And many of the Smart Pots that are in my shed are at least 12 years old, because one of the questions that I get all the time is, how long do they last? Can you use them, several years? Well, and I brought you this one. I didn't bring some of the bigger ones that I'll show you pictures of because they're too big for my Zoom room. But anyway, I wanted to show you what great shape this one is in. That's at least 8 years old, other than being dusty and having some random roots. So I am so glad. Thank you all for your comments. I love them, and I will also save them and go back. And I'm so glad that you have enjoyed some of these programs that I have been doing. It has been a great way to connect with you and to, help us all stay excited about plants and gardens during the pandemic. So I envision that a lot of my virtual programs will continue. I will continue to do them through Hyannis Country Garden. I will continue to do them to garden clubs, and I will continue to do them through GardenCom, the Association of Garden Communicators that I belong to, because I think that we can draw audiences together from all over in this, way. And it is a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing. So thank you all for coming. We will give another couple of minutes until we get started so that people can remember, oh yes, I have to log on, and they can find that email and come in with us. And we are live on Facebook right now on my CL the Garden Lady page. I think it's also going out on the Smart Pots page. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. Now, I am going to be answering questions at the end of my presentation in the chat on Zoom. If you type in a question on my Garden Lady page, I will answer it after the program is over, because it's just too much to monitor several things all at once. But if you ask a question on the Smart Pots page, one of the Smart Pots people will help you out there. So, so that's good. And it is, is it Michael? Michael said, how smart are Smart Pots? You know what? I am going to tell you. Now, they might not be as smart as smartphones, but frankly, I think smartphones aren't smart enough, right? They often think that they're smarter than I am, but we know that's not true. So I am so glad to see you here. Now, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to give you sort of the initial presentation, and then I will come back with you in the Zoom room, and I will read the questions that have been typed in chat, and you can ask more other questions in chat as well. And so we'll get to all of that as we go along. And the other thing I want you to know is that all of you who are here with me on Zoom link, your emails will be sent to the folks at Smart Pot, and they're going to send at least 15 lucky people some free Smart Pots. They will contact you if you're a winner. They'll send you an email and want your shipping address, okay? So all good, all good. And I think what we can do is get into the presentation now. It's about 4 minutes after 5. And so I say, we get creative with Smart Pots. All right, and that's what it's all about. I was introduced to Smart Pots at a Garden Com meeting. Oh, it was many years ago. I can't even remember how many years ago it was. And here's what's smart about Smart Pots, okay? This is not a plant that's been grown in a Smart Pot. This is a plant that's been grown in a standard, either clay or plastic pot. And we know what the roots do when they're in a clay or plastic pot, right? They go to the side of the pot, they hit the side of the pot, and then they go around and around and around, and you end up with this thick layer of roots on the outside, and it gets thicker and thicker so that then it's not surrounded by dirt and it's hard to keep it watered. This is a rosemary plant, and frankly, you're looking at one of the reasons that rosemary plants are prone to drying out and death in the house, because when you water them, there's nothing around those roots that go around and around to keep them hydrated. But here's the thing about the Smart Pot. This is when I was at a Garden Com meeting in Oklahoma City, and we visited a trial garden by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension, and they had a number of plants growing into these pots. And he explained to us that when the pot is on the ground, the roots can go down into the ground, so that's a good thing. But the roots that approach the side of the Smart Pot, they don't hit it and go around and around and around, because it's porous, it's fabric, it's a heavy felt fabric. And so when the roots approach that, they get air pruned and they stop. And then the plant grows more roots out in soil, and when it gets close to the sides, they stop. That's why these pots are so smart. Yes, they allow you to grow plants in a number of places. Yes, they're lightweight, but the reason that they function so well is that they root prune the plants, and your plants end up with denser root systems that are in the soil, not out around and around the pot. And I also love that these are a not made in China product. When you get Smart Pots, you will see the made in the USA label. Smart pots, when I was first introduced to them, were only black. Okay, that's the color they came in. Well, now they come in all kinds of colors, and this isn't even all of them. But the green is new this year. I am trying some of those. There's blue and orange and purple. And you may know that my motto is you can never go wrong with purple. So it is a heavy fabric planter. All right, that's basically it. And they let you grow plants anywhere. And that's the other wonderful thing about smart pots. This is an eggplant that I grew on the side of my zinnia patch one year. You know, you have the edges of gardens where there's nothing but mulch. Put some smart pots there and grow some food. These are mostly 20-gallon. We use 15, 20, and 25-gallon smart pots to grow all of our potatoes in. They are lined up on the outside of the zinnia patch. They are filled with garden dirt, not potting soil for potatoes. You don't want potting soil, you want real dirt. If you happen to have soil that has the scab bacteria, if you've ever grown potatoes and had that black kind of scabby stuff on them, that's a bacterial problem. So get yourself some smart pots and get yourself some bagged loam, not your garden soil that has the bacteria in it, and fill the smart pots and do your planting in there. Now, don't raise your hand while I'm talking because I don't respond to that because you can't talk to me, right? Type your questions in chat and I will get to them after the presentation. Okay. Now, these are where we grow our potatoes. And what we do with these are very large smart pots, right, is we put about 6 inches of soil in. We put 3 seed potatoes, 3 pieces, you know, you cut up a seed potato and put a piece with an eye. So we put 3 of those in. We put another 6 inches of soil and we put 3 more and we top it off with about 6 more inches of soil. And that is how we grow potatoes. Now, many people say, oh, do you keep adding soil like I read about on the internet? And my response always is, you know, I grew up in Wisconsin where they grow potatoes for Orida. And the farmers are not out in the fields constantly piling up soil. They bury those seed potatoes, right? And they come up and then they harvest the potatoes at the end of the summer. There's no piling up of soil. Now, if you don't cover your potatoes well, then of course you will need to cover them with more soil, but cover them well in the first place. And then you don't have to think about it. These are the potatoes as they're growing during the summer. They're actually quite a pretty plant. And here is my husband with our former dog, Riley, looking on, harvesting the potatoes. One of the beauties of smart pots, first of all, is that in these pots, you don't get the wire worms that can go into potatoes. The second thing is they're easy to harvest. If you've ever planted potatoes in a garden, you know that when you dig down, you invariably put that garden shovel or the garden fork right through a couple of potatoes. Well, with the smart pots, you can just reach in and feel them and harvest them. And in fact, we start to harvest new potatoes in August. We just reach in and harvest a few for dinner without disturbing the rest of them. And we grow many potatoes that way. Some of our smart pots get the edges rolled down and then they're put into crates and they're put into our seed starting shed, and we grow lettuce in them during the winter. We can plant lettuce in October for harvest in November, December, and then we plant seeds at the end of January for harvest in the early spring. Now, many people grow cannabis in smart pots, and they do that for several reasons. First of all, you can park them anywhere, right? And Massachusetts law anyway is that you need to grow cannabis in a place where people can't easily see it. All right, it's all about protecting kids. And so if you've got a place that's not really good for digging, where people can't really see it, that's a good place to grow in a smart pot. And you would use garden soil again, and you can mix it with a little bit of the one of the potting mixes that are formulated for cannabis, like Sohum soil or Stonington blend, but mainly you want some good garden soil in there, and you want to plant ideally 1 per pot. These plants that are 1 per pot are going to grow bigger than these that are 3 per pot. The more you have plants together crowding each other, the smaller they are, the less productive they are. Here is, vegetables, corn, beans, there's squash here, sunflowers. These were planted in great big fabric planters on the steps of the Parliament building in Quebec City. And they showed that you can grow food anywhere. So you can put these on your driveway. You can put these in your guest parking area. You can put them alongside of a road. This person, there wasn't a greenhouse, kind of looks like one, but again, a long row of raised beds growing all kinds of vegetables. Now, about the only thing you might not want to grow in these is carrots, unless you get the big bags that are deep. All right, if you get the deep ones, then you can grow root crops too. Here is a whole farm of vegetables on the roof. Okay, so up on a roof, you can grow, on decks, you can grow, on cement, you can grow. These people, again, we're growing cannabis. So again, tucking it out of the way in a sunny corner where it's not going to be seen. And these people had it on a deck. Now, if you have a smart pot on a deck, you might consider putting it on a board that lifts it off of the deck so that the dampness of the smart pot isn't constantly on your deck. I think that would be a smart thing to do. The other thing you can do is get some of these big dollies that wheel around and hold a lot of weight, put it on a dolly, and that way it's movable and you can move it out into the sunshine and you can move it undercover if you need to. So I think that would be smart in this situation. And talking about moving plants, these people really had a system down. They put them on the Rubbermaid carts and they moved them around according to the sun. So I thought that this was kind of clever. Now, I love smart pots because you can use them to line just about anything. And you can make so many things into a planter with smart pots. They sell them that line milk crates, right? So you can buy a milk crate liner if you've got milk crates and just plop it in there. They've got the handles on the milk crate already. It's a standard size. A lot of people have these kind of in the back of their garage or kicking around someplace. And you can use this to create a planter that also is easily movable. Or you could build a box to hold them. Someone built a box to hold this long bed. This was the long bed and they built the box and it frames it beautifully, right? It looks attractive. It's not difficult carpentry here. This is pretty basic frame, but really a nice thing to do. So think about doing that. When I saw these in the Pittsburgh or Philadelphia airport one year. And these boxes were made out of recycled pallets. Well, I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be great to make some boxes to fit around a smart pot out of recycled pallets? So think about doing that. And, you can throw a little paint on a few of them and make it look charming. You can also line a heavier pot. Now, somebody asked me in advance whether smart pots would be good for growing a Mayer lemon so that he could more easily bring it inside. And I think that they're perfect for that. If you've got a marginally hardy plant, like a fig tree or a lemon tree, and you want to say, put it in a whiskey barrel, okay? Get a smart pot that lines the whiskey barrel. And if you're real smart, you'll get the ones with handles. There are some that have handles on them for easier picking up and some that don't, right? So you grow it outside in the whiskey barrel all summer long, but then rather than hauling that heavy whiskey barrel or heavy pottery pot inside the garage or inside to overwinter your plant, you can pick up the smart pot, put it on a big plastic saucer, right? Buy a big plastic saucer at your garden center, put it on that, and bring it indoors where you want to overwinter it. So it's very flexible that way. I can see cannas would be perfect for this because cannas are tropical plants. They can't stay outside. You can even leave them in the dirt. Bring in the smart pot, right? Leave it in the garage, let it be dormant, put it back outside, same dirt, and for at least 3 or 4 years, you're going to be able to grow cannas that way. And they're great for lining a large container. I love the look of these livestock troughs. And if you're lucky enough to live in a place where there's a farm store like Fleet Farm, you can find them there. You can order them on Amazon even. And I think they're nice because they have both a rural sensibility and a modern sensibility. So they work for a lot of locations and they're not that expensive. This is one of the 2 that I have on my back deck, and they kind of finish off the corners on my back deck. And here it is when it was brand new and we put it out there. And the first thing I did was that I put an upside down plastic crate and a few flower pots in the bottom to raise, the sort of the level of dirt up. And so that I had a drainage area for excess water to drain into. These tubs have a drainage hole, and the drainage hole is kind of right here. You can see the light that's coming from the drainage hole. The drainage hole is down near the bottom. So you raise these up, and that way it allows water to collect in the bottom and drain out. Perfect. Then I lined these troughs with 2 smart pots. These were 25-gallon smart pots in these very big containers. And then when they are filled with potting mix, I can plant in them. Things grow beautifully in there, and we've got good drainage. And I tell you that I have used these same bags, just refreshing the soil a little bit for the last 8 years in these troughs. And you can, if this is a different trough, it's a different size. I used smart pots. I told you in the beginning, they last a long time. For those of you who weren't here just a few minutes before we started, I explained that I am currently using smart pots that are between 10 and 12 years old, many of them 8 years old. They last a long time. And these that I used to line this particular trough were also a few years old already. Now they were a little too big, but I just you bend them down and they can conform to fit. And look at how beautifully they grow tulips. I grow a forest of tulips in these every single year. And every spring I can play with different colors of tulips. And it's like a new box of crayons. I can go pastel, I can go brilliant, I can go all white and purple, and then once the tulips are gone, I plant annuals in the troughs. And they grow beautifully as well. And I love the King Tut papyrus in these troughs. And they drain well, and they're just perfect. And in this one, which is a smaller size, I've taken to growing edible flowers. It's right outside my kitchen door. And so things like nasturtiums and calendula and the borage are wonderful in them. Now, if you have a rabbit problem, these big troughs lined with smart pots are perfect for growing vegetables because they're deep. You grow, good deep vegetables, but they're up high enough that the bunnies don't get them. So, if you've been fighting Thumper for a couple of years and want to find a way to particularly grow, maybe not huge crops, but a lot in something like that, it's sort of an instant raised bed. And I loved how this business, they lined the sidewalk with the troughs, and, you know, they make a nice barrier as well. So what else can you line with smart pots? It doesn't have to stop with those troughs. Have you got a bushel basket? You could grow in a bushel basket, and you get, you know, a smart pot that fits in the bushel basket. You might want it to be the natural color like this one, or you might want it to be one of the bright colors. Most people have a pile of old pavers or bricks or flat stones in the backyard. Well, stack them up around a smart pot, and you've got an instant stone planter. You don't have to do any masonry, just stack it up, because the smart pot is holding the soil, right? So that's doing the real heavy lifting, and you can have the look of whatever stones you've got, and it can be a way to upcycle those old bricks or those old pavers, or, you know, that Pennsylvania wall stone that you've had in a pile. And the short garden edging or fencing can be wonderful with smart pots. Now you can find any number of styles around on the internet, okay? And in your local garden center. So whether it's bamboo or wood or wire, you could use these. I saw these at Hyannis Country Garden the other day, different styles, as I say. And most of them are about the same height as smart pots or a little higher. So I took this border fence, which is just wire, you know, fencing that is made for making a little border. And I cut pieces to go around a smart pot. I bent the ends to hold it together. You see, there's a bent end, and they're cut so that they hold it together. The wires stick into the ground to hold it in place, and it makes sort of an instant charming presentation for a smart pot. And you can use it, you know, I've got the green with the green here, but you could use it green with purple. You know, this pot here is a little shorter, right? It's a smaller size smart pot, and that's a bigger size. So you can then put those just about anywhere. And when they are placed out on gravel, for example, it allows you to grow flowers, herbs, vegetables, whatever you want in a place that otherwise would be difficult to plant plants. Now, if you are interested in knowing heights as it relates to the gallon pot, take your smartphone right now and shoot a picture of this, all right? Or you can take a screenshot on your computer. If you're watching on your computer and know how to take a screenshot, take a screenshot. The smart pots people are in the process of updating their website. I think maybe the dimensions, these are the dimensions from their catalog that list the gallon size of the pots and then how big they are. Hopefully that will be on the website soon, because that way you can match the dimensions of the smart pot to whatever it is you want to fill. Maybe you've got a wire basket hanging around in your garage, you know, or one of those old burn bins that were made out of wire, or maybe you've got something else that is a decorative that you think, oh, I could make this into a planter with a smart pot. Well, these will tell you what the sizes are here. So shoot a picture of that. The ones that have handles are a little bit different. If you want to take a picture of this too, please go right ahead and take a screenshot if you would like. I will take both of these later and put them underneath the recording of the Facebook Live on my CL the Garden Lady Facebook page. So you can then refer back to them then. If you don't have a cell phone handy or don't know how to take a screenshot, you can go on to my Facebook page and get that. So the other thing that you can think about doing is some of those logs that are kicking around. You could form those into a circle, couldn't you? and then put a big smart pot in the middle and have an instant planter that's very natural looking. And in fact, if you have big enough logs, you can turn them into a fairy garden come to life. These are some big tree trunks that were delivered to our house. We heat our house with wood, and you can see the wood pile back here. And oftentimes my husband will order wood on someplace like Craigslist. And this particular year, what was supposed to be dumped off were sections of logs that ranged between 6 inches and say 12 or 16 inches in diameter. The person that we bought it from not only dumped those, he dumped the trunks as well. Now, there is no cutting these with a home chainsaw. There is no splitting them with even the hydraulic splitter that we borrow from a friend. They weighed tons. This big one, it weighed about as much of a Volkswagen Beetle. So my husband was pondering what he could do with these because he knew that I would start to complain about how they looked in my garden. So I told him, if you can get them vertical, I can do something with them. So he borrowed our neighbor's tractor, and he borrowed our neighbor's son, who had a strong back, and the two of them with the tractor got them vertical and placed in this arrangement. Then on 3 of them, one in the back, one here, and one here, I put smart pots. I stapled them to the top of those logs. I filled them with potting soil like this. And then, of course, you want to cover them up, right? So what I did is I used slabs of bark, and I first tied the slabs of bark in place with some bark covered wire. You can buy that at any craft store. And then I wound some twig garland. Again, you can buy it at any craft store. And I wound that around to cover up the fabric. Now, you could also use something like the blinds that are made out of reed or bamboo, right? Maybe you have some of those old things kicking around, or maybe you find something at a garage sale. There are all kinds of things that you could repurpose to cover the smart pots. And then I plant in them every year. And every year I play with a different selection of plants. Some years it goes purple, some years it goes pink, some years it goes brilliant red and orange. But every year it does look like a fairy garden come to life. And the plants just grow so beautifully in the pots on top of the logs. And here, with a few words to live by: don't piss off the fairies. You can also make instant arches or arbors or playhouses with smart pots. And here, is an instant arch. These are the 2 pots on either end. They used fresh cut willow branches, put them in the pots where they, of course, being willows, rooted, and they tied them together and they start to grow. So isn't that charming? And you can Google fresh cut willow branches or contact your local wholesale florist. And because you can buy them. Now, if you don't want willow branches, or if you can't find them, you could use fresh cut, small saplings or long branches that are fresh, and you could just bend them, and then you grow a vine up them, like morning glories or moonflower, some fast growing vine. Now, this is kind of decorative, but I was thinking, this could be the start of a kid's fort or playhouse, couldn't it? You make a nice circle, and then you put branches up. They don't have to be willow. In this case, they are, but any branches will do. And then plant some scarlet runner beans and some moonflower. Plant some morning glories, any of those fast growing annual vines. You can plant them right in the smart pot soil, and you can include some edible plants as well, some cherry tomatoes or some herbs. and you have very quickly a little summer house for the kids. And why should the kids have all the fun? Why don't you plant one for yourself as well? All right, this is the Smart Pots website. And so you can go there to get information. They are redesigning it. It's going to be up and new and spiffy. You can buy Smart Pots at local garden centers. You can buy them online. There are any number of places that you can get them. Okay, so let's get to some questions here. And I am so glad that you've been with me. What size would be good for growing tomatoes, big boy and early girl? I'd get at least a 20-gallon. All right. You might be able to get away with a 15-gallon, but I would go for the 20-gallon because bigger root systems mean bigger plants, which means more tomatoes. Can you grow clematis in a Smart Pot? Yes, I believe you could grow clematis in a Smart Pot because clematis are hardy to about a zone 4. I would get a large one, but yes, you could do that. Basically for a container, whether it's a Smart Pot or any other container, you want to put plants in that container that are 2 zones hardier from where you live. And so clematis being hardy in a zone 4, I'm assuming you may be in my area, a zone 6. Let's see, somebody said, is now a good time to plant potatoes in Smart Pots? Well, if you are on Cape Cod, it's a little early. We usually put ours in the soil around the middle of May. So it's a little too cold yet for potatoes out there. But if you live in a place where the nighttime temperatures are reliably above 50 or getting there, then you could do it. Does Country Garden sell Smart Pots? Yes, they do. And they have a big amount of purple in addition to black right now. I noticed the purple ones and because, you know, it's one of my favorite colors. When do you use soil and when do you use potting mix and what is the difference? That is a great question. The difference is what you're going to grow in them. Okay, if you are going to grow summer annuals like I did on the top of my stumps, right? I use potting mix in there, and I use a potting mix that's a good quality, you know, organically rich potting mix. I tend to use Coast of Maine. So for annual plants, use that. You could use that mixed with some loam. If you're growing vegetables, you want at least part loam, or you could use one of the raised bed mixes that they sell at garden centers. I think Coast of Maine makes a raised bed mix as well. But for vegetables, you want a good amount of real dirt because potting mix is all organic matter and some perlite for drainage and lightness. That's not good enough for your vegetables. You want some amount of real dirt. Now, if you've got a really big bag, you could do 3/4 loam or garden soil from your own garden, and then mix 1/4 of it, either a potting mix or compost for the organic matter and to lighten it up a little bit. For potatoes, you would use again, garden soil. For cannabis, garden soil. So basically, I think for any vegetable plant or any plant like clematis that is going to be permanently there, I would use real garden soil amended with some organic matter or some potting soil. And then I would use potting mix for annuals. Let's see, Linda asked, do you use fresh soil every year or can you reuse the soil? What I do on my big troughs is I dig out the top 12 inches, okay? Because that's where the majority of the roots from last year's plants are located. And basically with plants, you don't want to be putting your new plants in a container that's all congested with last year's roots, because that would be like asking you to move into a house where the former owners left all their furniture and you had to move all your furniture in among all of their furniture, right? Too crowded. Well, that's what it's like if you plant a plant in last year's soil with all the old roots. So what I usually do is remove the top. Then the bottom I break up to break up those old roots, all right? I turn it up a little. And I might even put a little bit of organic fertilizer like flower tone or plant tone in there and mix that in order to add some nutrients. And then I put the newer mix on the top and maybe mix it in with a little of the older mix. I take what I have taken out and I put it in my compost pile. So it doesn't go to waste, it goes into my compost. Do the roots grow out the bottom of smart pots? Is it difficult to pick them up and clean in the fall? And can you leave it in place over the winter? Okay, great questions, Noreen. First of all, if the smart pots are on something like dirt, yes, the roots will go down into the soil. And that's actually a benefit, particularly if you are growing vegetables, because the more roots a plant has, the deeper the root system, the stronger that plant and the more productive it will be for you. So if you're growing vegetables, it's nice to have them there, but they don't have to be there. They don't have to be on soil, all right? As you saw on the steps of that Parliament building and on the roof there, those pots were right on asphalt or cement or whatever. Those pots that they were growing on the roof had clearly, I could tell, been left out over the winter and had been in place for at least 3 or 4 years. And the reason I could tell that was that there was some moss growing around the bottom of them. So, and that would only happen if they had been in place for a long time, or at least a few years. So yes, I would say you leave them out. Now, in terms of their longevity, of course, anything exposed to the weather and the sunlight in particular tends to break down faster than what you would bring in and out. But as I mentioned, those troughs that I have lined, I did those many years ago, and they stay out year round. You know, it stays out. They're not exposed, the smart pots themselves in the troughs are not exposed to the sun, however, because they're, you know, inside the bin. But they should last for a long time outside, certainly. It's not difficult to pick them up. No, it really isn't. What we do with our potatoes is that we empty that soil into the zinnia bed at the end of the season. And because the pots are pliable, and even if the roots have grown down into the soil, it isn't difficult to just kind of tip them over. Now, if you wanted to bring a big smart pot filled with soil into the garage to overwinter your fig tree, say, that's going to be harder to move because it's going to be heavy, not because the pot is heavy, but because the soil is heavy. And you might want to get a dolly or one of the big saucers on wheels for moving big plants, and you put the pot on that so that you could wheel it around. So anyway, and they are not difficult to clean. What we do is we empty them out, we let them dry for a day outside in the sun, then we take and we, you know, take the pressure setting on the hose nozzle and we squirt them off, then we let them dry for at least another day until they're good and dry. And then we stack them up and put them in the garden shed. And by the way, you don't have to, you know, meticulously clean them. If you look at this one here, this has been, you know, it's still got some roots in it, right? It's still got dust in here. You don't have to worry about that unless you've had some really weird contagious disease on your plants. Then you might want to think about sterilizing them somehow. But in all the 12 years that I have used this product, I have never sterilized them at all. What about watering? Just like with a regular container. Again, it kind of depends on what you're growing and where they are. If you've got a big pot and it's black and it's out in the full sun, when it's really sunny and hot out, you might need to water them every day, just like you'd need to water other containers every day, certainly. If they're smaller, they're going to lose moisture more quickly because there's less soil to hold on to it. So those, you know, I certainly would check them every day. And I know with our potatoes, when it's not real hot, we don't water them every day, and we check them every couple of days to see if the soil is getting dry. And like any container, you want to thoroughly water them when you water them. And the way to best thoroughly water containers is to water every container first, right? Really well with a watering wand or whatever, and then go back and do it again. Because the first time often doesn't saturate the whole root ball. So going back and doing it again, make sure that you saturate the whole thing. Yes, 1 tomato plant per pot. You know, that it, for anything that's large growing, 1 per pot is going to produce a bigger plant and more tomatoes or more produce for you. All right. If you're growing smaller plants like herbs, pack them in there just like you would any container. I think when I grew eggplants, I put 2 in smart pots that were probably about this big in diameter. Maybe they were 15 gallons. So judge by the size, the ultimate size of your plants, how many you put in. If you were growing chard in a smart pot that's about this size, you could put 8 plants in there, 3 or 4 inches apart, and it would do very well. So let's see. Do you know if these can be used in a water garden? Are they toxic to fish? That I don't know. That is a question that you should address to the Smart Pots people, because I don't, and I'm not an aquatics fish person. So but I've not heard that they are, but I have no idea. So you should investigate that. I answered about changing the potting soil, that I changed part of the potting soil. We do change the soil for our potatoes every year, but we take some compost out of our home compost pile, and we take some garden dirt out of our garden and add it to a little loam that we purchase. How many pounds of potatoes can you expect from a 15 to 20 gallon pot? I have never weighed my potatoes. I can tell you that we have black plastic crates filled with potatoes. I would say probably a 20. I would not plant them so much in a 15 gallon. I'd go for the 20 gallon. And you should expect to get maybe 25, 30 potatoes or a few more out of that. Frankly, I have never stopped to count. And I would have to start counting in August, because as I said, one of the advantages of these is you can sneak your hand, put on a garden glove, sneak it down the side of the Smart Pot, feel around, you feel the potatoes, and you feel the biggest one, and you pull it out, and you get another couple, and you have them for dinner. And they are amazing. When you pick a potato and bring it right to the table that night, it's unlike any potato you have ever had. And so we continue to do that from really early August on. We will be picking them, randomly out of the pots and bringing them in. So I've never really stopped to, either count or figure out the total harvest. But we have so many potatoes that we couldn't possibly eat them fresh. And what I do is I prepare twice baked potatoes and freeze them. So anytime I, need a great garden-based meal, I have twice baked potatoes in the freezer. What is the ratio of plain topsoil to Stonington mix or Sohum for cannabis? What you want is, I would do half and half. I would do about half and half, because you want good drainage. And now, if you have really sandy soil where you are, then you could go with a little less of the Stonington blend. The Stonington blend is actually my favorite if you're, growing in, because it's so high in organic matter, and which is good. But if you're using really, sandy, you could do a little less of the Stonington blend. No, you can't drop anything off here. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about here, but I don't have time to go into all of that, Wayne. But I will save the chat at the end and figure that out later. But please don't drop off anything at my house. Okay. Let's see. Leslie said, I'm thinking of a pot for each of the grandkids so they can pick what they want to grow. That is such a great idea, Leslie. That is such a wonderful idea. And, you know, you could even get a different color for each kid if you wanted to get really fancy about it. But I do love that idea. And that's true. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do because it's just kind of the right size for them. And they could grow, you know, a few carrots, and they could grow one of the smaller cherry tomatoes or whatever they happen to like, and they can choose what they want. They could grow a pizza garden and plant some oregano and some tomato and basil, right? And then you have a pizza party at the end of the summer. Can you make a raised bed higher to reach? That is smart. Yes. Well, what you can do, first of all, there are instant raised beds, smart pots. They're called bag in a box or something like that. Anyway, you open them up and you either have a round raised bed that's about this tall, or you have a long bed that's a little taller. Or you can get the really big smart pots and either build a frame for it, like I showed those wooden frames, or you could put them in troughs and have them small and have them taller. Do the colored smart pots fade? I don't know the answer to that because I have not used them yet. So in all honesty, I will let you know in a couple of years. I am now using some, well, the green ones would probably just fade to a lighter green. The black ones do not fade. So I know that, you know, from this, look at how dark that is. And this is several years old. I use planters that go over my fence rails. They're plastic. Is it okay to put a planter pot inside? You mean a smart pot inside the plastic planter? Absolutely. If you wanted to do that. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. If I haven't answered it, clarify and I will. Can you plant cukes and squash in smart pots? Yes, absolutely. Get them for something like summer squash, get a big one, get a 20-gallon, you know, something like that. For cucumbers, it could be 15-gallon, depending on the number of cucumbers. You could even go a little smaller. And what I would do if I were growing cucumbers in them is I would either put that smart pot next to a trellis or put it next to a railing or something, or a fence, and then you can, you know, tie and train the cucumbers vertically up, and they can have their roots in the smart pots down below. How do you start tomatoes? Well, potatoes. You can buy seed potatoes at most garden centers. I know Country Garden has seed potatoes right now. And what you do is you bring them into a warm place like your kitchen, and where it's light, and you leave them for a few days and they will start to sprout. Just like the ones that you forgot about in the drawer, you know, of your refrigerator that are a couple months old, they start to sprout. Well, when they start to sprout, then you cut them into pieces. So you've got pieces with a sprout on them, all right? And you plant those in the soil, either in the smart pots or in the ground. And that's what you do. What kind of potatoes do I grow? I grow a variety called Corolla, which is very similar to Yukon Gold. It's that yellow flesh, more waxy. I grow russet, which are the good baking potatoes. And we grow one of the red skin varieties, and I pick it whatever one crosses my path first. But the ones that you harvest for the new red potatoes, and then later that they are still red. Okay. Let's see, the planters, the rail planters are plastic. Would a smart pot work inside of these long rail planters? You would have to find the smart pot that would fit in them. Not knowing what size the you know, the rail planters are, it's hard for me to know. But if they're small enough, I'd bring the rail planter into the garden center and try and fit it in, or take the measurements of that rail planter and then, look and see what the size smart pot would fit. You might have to put a couple of smaller ones in a row, kind of like I put those two big ones in the horse trough. All right. Oh, good, Wayne. Thank you. I'm glad you had me worried, Wayne. I was worried that something was going to show up on my front porch and, okay. Let's see. What could you plant in a 7-gallon pot? You could, well, it depends on whether you want flowers. You could certainly plant annuals in a 7-gallon pot, just like you plant, annuals in a smaller container. In terms of edibles, I think you could grow chard very nicely. You certainly could grow herbs very nicely in a 7-gallon pot. So, that gives you a place to start. I think 7-gallon is a little too small for tomatoes, unless it's one of the miniature tomatoes, but any of the herbs and the smaller vegetables would be fine. I think you could even get away with hot peppers and eggplant in that size. What's the price range for smart pots? It's been so long that since I've purchased them, because they last so long, I don't remember. You'll have to check. You can find them many places online, and you can find them, at garden centers, but I'm sorry, I can't answer, because as I say, it has been many a moon since I bought new ones. And you can find them many places online. All right, I think Gardener Supply has them. I know you can find them on Amazon. If you just put smart pots into Google, you'll get a million places. So there are any number of places. Of course, I always encourage people to support their local independent garden center, but wherever it works for you, you'll be able to find them pretty easily. All right, do we have any other questions? I think we are good. I'm going to save this chat so that I remember who asked what, and there we are. Okay. I'm so glad that you joined me tonight, and I encourage you to have fun. Look at the junk that you have in your basement and your garage with new eyes that, ooh, how could this be a planter? Look at that pile of bricks. Look at that stack of logs, and realize that you can use these along with smart pots to create something really magical, or to grow some incredible flowers, or to grow some of your own food. So thanks so much for being with me. And I hope that you join me on another Zoom call in the future. And your names are going to be sent off to the Smart Pots people, and they will contact you if you're the winner of the door prize. Thanks a lot, guys.